We're going to start looking at shape now on the most basic level. What I have here is pink noise being sent through a number of envelope shapers. Some of these are going to have a dramatic difference, other ones are going to be fairly similar sounding and are meant to be. So what I have here is a contoured wave shape, where this is telling the pink noise where to hit in terms of amplitude. And it sounds like this. I've called that average, not because there is such thing as an average shape, but just because I wanted to start from somewhere. It gives us a basic idea of what we can compare to. Now here I've done a different wave shape. I've called it short spiky. We can listen to it. And if you compare average to short spiky, there's clearly a sonic difference. Even though the peak level is the same and all the frequency content is the same, you definitely hear a sonic difference. It's obvious. And the reason being is that it has a pretty substantially different wave shape. This one's short spiky here. And here's average below it. Notice how you have the same quick attack, but the decay is much faster, much more quick, and then there's no sustain. It just goes directly into a release. Whereas here with average, you have sort of a wider decay, and then you kind of have this sloping sustain, and then you have a release at the end. So totally different sounds, and it's pretty obvious. The next one I have is called fat square. Here's average again. Here's fat square. Now with fat square, the attack is actually so slowly decaying, it almost sounds like the attack is sustaining a little bit. That would be the equivalent of like quote-unquote over-compressing something. And the wave shape it's almost exactly how it sounds. You've got this very long, wide attack to sort of the same decay shape, and then the same sustain, same release. So it's basically the same as the average one, except for the attack is just holding out way longer. So it almost sounds like a moment of TV static. This one's called rounded out. Average. Rounded out. And I want you to spend a little time flipping between those two because there's a subtle difference here that I think is fairly important. In this version, rounded out, you have a slightly slower attack time. It's curved, it's rounded, it angles up, and then it curves out in its decay. Same sustain, same release. But when you look here, you see that it's more angular. It's got a faster, sharper attack time, and it's got a more linear style of decay. There's no curve to it. To put my finger on it, rounded out sounds a little softer than average. They both sound basically the same, but average sounds a little bit more hard, and rounded out sounds a little bit more soft. And I think that's an important comparison to make because that's one of the subtleties of adjusting something's shape. And that's what we're really starting to learn here. Now here's something I call very round. Average. Very round. Yeah, so I mean that one's pretty obvious. It sounds round. Like you really hear it as like a round sound. You can tell that the attack is not instantaneous. You can almost hear a little bit of the ramp in the attack. And that's an exaggeration of the rounded out sound, just to make the comparison a little easier. Then I've got these four little snare-like sounds. They don't really sound anything like snares, but they, I guess, kind of like in the Nine Inch Nails, electronica, old school electronica kind of way. And they all have slightly different shapes. They're all basically the same when it comes to their overall general shape, but they have some key differences. I have this spiky snare where it's got a very fast attack and decay. I've got your sort of average snare where the decay is a little bit slower and the sustain is up a little bit more. And I've got this like fat snare thing where it's, again, a slightly slower decay and then much more sustain going on. And then I've got this rounded one where the attack is slightly rounded out and the decay is slightly rounded out, but then the rest of the release and sustain are basically the same. They're going to sound pretty similar, but I'm going to go through them real quick. Spiky. Here's snare. Here's fat. And here's round. So definitely compare again the round one to the fat one and go through these and really just A-B back and forth because this is the foundation of trying to suss out hearing shape. it becomes a little more obvious. This is actually fairly difficult, but it becomes a little more obvious when you start using complex material because the frequency distribution is embedded into the envelope of the sound, and so you also get frequency change cues that allow you to hear it a little more easily. But anyway, yeah, download that stuff, pull it into your DAW, A/B, and start making qualitative decisions about, this one sounds spikier, this one sounds fatter, this one the attack sounds like it's being held longer, this one sounds like it's got a slightly rounded attack. Blind test it. Just call them A, B, C, or whatever, or have somebody else play them back for you, and really try and get used to hearing those subtle differences.